The Great Depression, Unraveling the 1929 Economic Collapse. The Great Depression stands as one of the most significant economic disasters in history, deeply impacting not only the United States, but the entire global economy. Beginning in 1929, this economic collapse left an indelible mark on the social, political, and economic landscapes of nations, reshaping economies and societies for generations to come. To fully understand the depth and scale of the Great Depression, it's crucial to examine its origins, causes, effects, and long-term consequences. The road to the Great Depression. The 1920s, often referred to as the Roaring Twenties, was a period of exuberant growth and prosperity in the United States. A booming stock market, mass production of consumer goods, technological advances, and rising consumerism defined the decade. The economy appeared invincible, and many believed that the era of economic downturns was a thing of the past. However, beneath the surface of economic success lay fragile foundations, one of the primary being the unsustainable speculative practices that gripped the stock market. A major driving force behind the economic boom of the 1920s was the rapid expansion of the stock market. As the decade wore on, more and more Americans began to invest in stocks, many doing so on margin, meaning they borrowed money to buy shares. This speculative behavior, while initially generating massive profits, led to an overheated market. Investors were no longer buying stocks based on the underlying health of companies, but rather on the hope that stock prices would continue to rise. The rising tide of speculation would eventually prove unsustainable. The stock market crash of 1929. On October 29, 1929, the stock market experienced what is now known as Black Tuesday. This day marked the most catastrophic stock market crash in U.S. history. After a period of market instability and a significant drop in stock prices, panic selling set in. Investors, who had borrowed heavily to buy stocks, rushed to sell their holdings in an attempt to cut their losses. The result was a massive wave of sell-offs, causing stock prices to plummet and wiping out billions of dollars in wealth. The crash did not occur in isolation. It was the culmination of a series of warning signs, including a gradual decline in stock prices leading up to the fateful day in October. The speculative bubble that had inflated stock prices for years burst, revealing the overvalued nature of the market. The collapse undermined public confidence in the economy and set off a chain reaction of events that would plunge the nation into the depths of a depression. The causes of the Great Depression. The stock market crash of 1929 was merely the trigger for the Great Depression, not its sole cause. The roots of the economic collapse were deep and multifaceted. Several interrelated factors contributed to the severity and duration of the Great Depression. Overproduction and underconsumption. Throughout the 1920s, American industries and farms produced an abundance of goods, but wages for many workers did not increase proportionally. This led to an imbalance between supply and demand. As a result, businesses faced falling profits, and many were forced to reduce production or lay off workers. With fewer people able to purchase goods, the downward economic spiral gained momentum. Bank failures. Following the stock market crash, banks were heavily affected. Many banks had invested in the stock market and were now faced with the collapse of their assets. With customers withdrawing their savings in mass panic, thousands of banks failed. This created a severe credit crunch, making it difficult for individuals and businesses to obtain loans, further stalling economic activity. The collapse of international trade. The Great Depression did not remain confined to the United States. Global economies were interconnected, and the U.S. was a major trading partner for many countries. As the Depression took hold, foreign demand for American goods plummeted, leading to a worldwide contraction in trade. The situation was exacerbated by the United States' imposition of tariffs, such as the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which aimed to protect domestic industries but only worsened the global economic downturn. The Dust Bowl. While the Depression was largely economic, it was compounded by environmental factors. In the 1930s, the U.S. Midwest was struck by the Dust Bowl, a series of severe dust storms caused by a combination of drought and poor farming practices. This environmental disaster devastated crops and forced many farmers to abandon their land, deepening the economic challenges for rural Americans. monetary policy, and the gold standard. The Federal Reserve, which was tasked with stabilizing the economy, made several critical errors during the lead-up to the Depression. In an attempt to combat the speculative bubble, the Fed raised interest rates in 1928 and 1929, making credit more expensive. This worsened the economic slowdown and stifled consumer spending. Moreover, the U.S. was still on the gold standard, which limited the government's ability to increase the money supply and stimulate the economy. The human toll, unemployment, and poverty. As the Depression worsened, the human cost was devastating. Unemployment rate soared, reaching around 25% in the United States by 1933. Factories closed, banks failed, and families were left homeless. The economic collapse had a profound impact on nearly every segment of society, from urban workers to rural farmers. People lost their homes, their savings, and their livelihoods, and the country was forced to confront the grim reality of a collapsing economy. The rise in unemployment led to widespread poverty, bread lines, soup kitchens, and Hoovervilles. Makeshift shanty towns named after President Herbert Hoover, who was in office when the Depression began, became common sights in cities across the United States. Many Americans were forced to rely on charity or government assistance to survive. The emotional and psychological toll of the Depression was immense, as families struggled with uncertainty and despair. The government's response. The response to the Great Depression came in the form of significant government intervention, particularly under President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt, who took office in 1933, implemented a series of programs known as the New Deal, aimed at providing relief, recovery, and reform. The New Deal included measures to provide direct aid to the unemployed, reform the banking system, and stimulate economic recovery. Key programs included the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, the Public Works Administration, PWA, and the Social Security Act, which aimed to provide a safety net for vulnerable Americans. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, was also created to ensure bank deposits and restore confidence in the banking system. The New Deal had mixed results. While it helped alleviate some of the suffering caused by the Depression and laid the groundwork for the eventual recovery, it did not fully end the Depression. It wasn't until the onset of World War II, which created a massive demand for war materials and services, that the U.S. economy fully recovered. The long-term consequences of the Great Depression. The Great Depression had lasting effects that shaped the future of the United States and the world. One of the most significant long-term consequences was the expansion of government involvement in the economy. The New Deal programs marked the beginning of the welfare state in America, establishing the precedent for future government intervention in times of economic crisis. The Depression also led to significant changes in economic theory and policy. The Keynesian economic model, which advocates for government intervention to manage demand and smooth economic cycles, gained prominence in the wake of the Depression. Additionally, the failure of laissez-faire policies during the Depression led to the development of more robust regulatory frameworks for financial institutions. Globally, the Depression also contributed to the rise of authoritarian regimes, as countries like Germany and Italy saw the rise of Hitler and Mussolini, who promised to restore national pride and stability. The Depression had a profound effect on the political landscape in Europe, setting the stage for the geopolitical tensions that would lead to World War II. The Great Depression remains one of the most defining moments in modern history. Its impact was felt across the globe, reshaping economies, societies, and governments. The economic collapse that began in 1929 revealed the fragile nature of the global financial system and highlighted the need for government intervention to stabilize economies in times of crisis. Although the Great Depression eventually ended, its lessons continue to shape economic policy and public sentiment to this day. Understanding this pivotal moment in history allows us better to navigate the challenges of the present and the future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.